If someone asks you right now who you are and the only answer you have is your job title, that's a problem. And I don't mean that as an insult, I mean it as a warning. Because a lot of us in this industry have quietly let our job become our entire identity. Not on purpose. Nobody sits down and decides I'm going to become my job. It just happens. One late night and one last PR at a time. When I first started working, I loved building side projects. I used it as a way to learn new things and refine my skills. But at a random party, someone asked me what I did other than writing code or building projects, and I went blank. I couldn't answer them because I genuinely had nothing else. I was just the guy who writes code. I realized that I had let my skill turn into my personality, and I decided to change that. So today, I want to talk about something that sounds simple, but most people get wrong: having a hobby outside of work. And specifically, having a hobby that has nothing to do with what you do at work. Not a side project, not learning a new framework for fun, not building an app on the weekend. Something completely and deliberately unrelated. Here's what we're covering: why this identity fusion happens in the first place, especially in tech, what it actually costs you when it goes wrong, why the hobby has to be unrelated to your job to actually work, and then how to actually go find one, because I know that's the part most people get stuck on. Software is one of the only industries that sells itself as a passion, not a job. Think about how often you've heard, find something you love and you'll never work a day in your life. Job listings say things like, we're looking for someone passionate about clean code. Interviewers ask you what side projects you build in your free time. Like your free time is supposed to be an extension of the interview. So from day one, the message is clear. Your job isn't something you do, it's supposed to be who you are. And look, there's nothing wrong with liking what you do. I like what I do. The problem is when it becomes the only thing. Add to that the always on culture of Slack notifications at 9 p.m., quick calls that eat your evening, the guilt of closing your laptop while a PR is still in review, and you end up with an entire industry of people whose days start and end with the same activity: code, then more code, then code about the code you wrote earlier. There's also a quieter reason this happens: it's easy. You're already good at coding, you already have the setup, the tools, the mental muscle for it. Starting a side project takes zero activation energy compared to, say, picking up pottery, where you're going to be genuinely bad at it for months. So we default to what's comfortable, and comfortable over the years becomes all we are. Okay, so say this happens. Say your job becomes your identity. What's the actual damage? The first one is obvious: burnout. If work is the only source of satisfaction in your life, you end up squeezing more and more out of it because it has to cover everything: your sense of achievement, your sense of progress, your social validation, all of it coming from one place. That's a lot of weight for one part of your life to carry. Now, the real cost becomes clear when you have a bad day. If your identity is, I'm a good engineer, and then you have a rough sprint, maybe a bug you can't crack, a review that goes badly, a project that gets cancelled, you don't just lose your job satisfaction for the day, you lose your entire sense of self for the day because there's nothing else to fall back on. There's no other version of you to be while this version is struggling. Compare that to someone who also plays football every Wednesday, or is learning the guitar, or spends weekends restoring an old motorcycle. They have a bad day at work, and it's still a bad day, but it's contained. It doesn't spread into every part of who they are, because there's a whole other part of them that's completely unaffected by whatever is happening in stand up that morning. That's the real value of a hobby. It's not really about the hobby itself, it's about having more than one place where your self worth can live. There's a second cost too, and it's more long term. If your entire identity is tied to being a software engineer, you become genuinely afraid of anything that threatens that identity. A layoff doesn't just feel like losing a job, it feels like losing yourself. A skill becoming outdated doesn't just feel like trying to learn something new, it feels like an existential threat. People who have a life outside their job tend to handle career setbacks better. Not because the setback matters any less to them, but because it's not the only thing that defines them. Now, here's the part I actually want to spend the most time on, because I think most people get this wrong even when they're trying to do the right thing. A lot of developers here get a hobby and think, great, I'll build a side project, I'll contribute to open source, I'll learn Rust for fun. And I get why. It feels productive, it feels like self improvement, but it defeats the entire point. If your hobby is still code, you haven't actually built a separate part of your identity. You just built a second job with worse pay and no boundaries. You're still measuring yourself the same way. Did I ship something? Did I get better? Did I make progress? You're still in the same headspace, using the same skills and running the same internal scorecard. And when that goes badly too, when the side project stalls, when the open source PR gets ignored, Now you don't have just one source of I'm not good enough. You have two stacked on top of each other. The whole point of a hobby is that it gives your brain a genuinely different mode to operate in. Something where you're not being measured. Something where being mediocre is completely fine. Because there's no ticket, no sprint, no code review attached to it. I used to work on this app in my free time while working as a mobile engineer in my actual job. It started off well, kept things interesting after work, and kept my mind engaged. But slowly I started feeling overworked, even though my work wasn't actually all that taxing. My mind started to feel slow and I would get tired quicker than usual. The thing was, I never switched off my work brain. I just transitioned from my full time job to my self imposed part time job. My mind never got any rest. And no, sleep alone is not enough. There's actually research on this, and the term for it is called psychological detachment. The idea that recovery from work stress only really happens when your mind is genuinely somewhere else. Not adjacent, not related, but relaxed. The moment a hobby starts to resemble your job, same skills, same kind of thinking, same pressure to improve, your brain doesn't fully detach and you don't get the recovery benefit at all. So the unrelated part isn't just a nice to have, it's the entire mechanism that makes this work. Okay, so how do you actually go do this? Because I know the instant reaction to get a hobby is great, but what? A few things that have actually worked for people in no particular order. Pick something physical if your job is fully mental. Most of us sit at a desk and think all day. Something with your hands or your body, like climbing, running, cooking, woodworking, gives your brain an actual break, not just a change of scenery. Lower the bar for yourself, deliberately. You're used to being good at things because you're good at your job. Being a beginner again is uncomfortable. That discomfort is the point. It's proof you're genuinely in a new part of your identity and not just a variation of the old one. Give it a few weeks before judging it. The first 2 or 3 sessions of almost any new hobby feels pointless. You haven't built the skill yet, so there's no payoff. Stick with it past that window before deciding if it's not for you. Don't optimize it. This is the hardest one for us specifically because we optimize everything. Don't turn your hobby into a system with metrics and streaks in a spreadsheet. The second you do that, you've dragged your work brain into it and you're right back where you started. And if you genuinely don't know where to start, just think back to something you liked before you had a job. Before productive was even a word you used about your free time. That's usually a pretty good place to look. So, go back to that question from the start. If someone asks you who you are and your job title is the only answer you got, that's not a life problem. It's not even really a career problem. It's just a gap, and it's a fixable one. You don't need to become a different person. You just need that one thing that has nothing to do with code. Something that's all yours, on its own terms, that nobody can put a performance review on. I'm Nemi, and I'll see you next time.